Andor is back. What's season 2 looking like for us? Bright Suns, everybody, Batuuboii here, and welcome to another review episode. We are finally here. It is Andor time. As all of you know, Andor is my favorite Star Wars show out there. It's tied into my favorite Star Wars movie, Rogue One. Season 1 was kind of polarizing for most people, especially when it first came out, like episodically. You know, the first 3 episodes to a lot of people, it was very slow burn, but as the season picked up, it just got more intense, more action packed. There's more weaving storylines, and it just ended so well and with such a climactic battle at the end. And we were just left, at least me, wanting more of this side of the Star Wars story, with the spark of that started the rebellion, the origin story of Cassian Andor, who is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. And when season 2 was announced, obviously I was very excited. I, you know, sat it on the panel there in celebration of 2023. My friends obviously got some more out of that. And this past celebration, I believe they did get to watch the first episode entitled 1 Year Later. And this release was very interesting in that we really see a lot of these streaming shows now either release an episode at a time, or have these 2 episode releases and then go into a weekly or an episode every week, or just throw the entire thing onto the streaming service, and that's where we go from there. This one, it's a little weird, as it's the first 3 episodes, and then every Tuesday get about 2 or 3 more episodes every week on the same day. So this week we got 3 episodes, and I think this is where we're going to start seeing it build into what we have been hearing about, as each of these sections is a different section in time leading up to the events of Rogue One. As we know, this is going to be the final season of Andor, and this will, I believe, lead immediately into Rogue One, where at the end of Rogue One, it immediately leads up to A New Hope, which I really liked about the movie overall. So I think it's best that, for this review, we kind of dive into the story arcs that we see throughout these 3 episodes, as we kind of bounce around between these different stories. And by the end of the 3rd episode, we see these little story arcs come to an end. So I'm thinking I just go over these 4 stories. With the first one, I want to open up with, as I've titled, Cassian in the Jungle. We started off, Cassian is undercover as a TIE test pilot. He gets onto this kind of concept TIE fighter, where it's kind of like an interceptor, where it's the sharp point ends in the front, but they also point in the back. And you can tell that he was not trained to fly this piece of machinery. From what he was understanding, that it was supposed to be some sort of interceptor or a regular fighter, but this is completely new to him. He does not know how to fly this ship, and you can clearly see it in the episode, and it leads to some pretty crazy antics, and I think a much better way to open up the show than the first episode of season 1 did. It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of troopers getting blasted, and lo and behold, he's able to escape. And he lands on this jungle planet where he is supposed to meet his co-pilot. Spoiler alert, his pilot is not there. He was killed by a band of rogue rebellion soldiers. They don't really clearly say that they're aligning with the rebellion. They're kind of a hot mess. They stressed me out the entire time they were on screen. They're always arguing with each other, fighting each other, up to a boiling point where they literally just start shooting at each other and split off into 2 separate sections of the jungle. And that's pretty much the majority of this story arc, is them fighting each other. Fast forward, they finally come to an agreement and put their weapons down, and I wanted to note it here, try to resolve their issues by playing a very weird version of rock, paper, scissors. I'm not joking. It's actually kind of hilarious. Cassian's able to best these soldiers, be able to get onto his ship, and fly out of there. As we move forward into that story arc, you see Cassian kind of floating in space, still trying to figure out how to make the ship work and be able to fix the communication so he can radio his friends back wherever they are. This is where we will stop that story arc because it is going to bleed into the end of another story arc later on. The next one that we will get into, we meet up with Daedra again, who is an officer of the Empire, and we open up with her story arc meeting back up with one of the most pinnacle villains in Rogue One, and that is Director Krennic, played to perfection by Ben Mendelsohn. He's just always giving it his all for this role. He's a little less whinier than he is in the movie. I feel that like he's trying to just kind of pick up all of these broken pieces as he is building like your final preparations for the Death Star in Rogue One. Here he's a lot more tactile and is a very like just straight to the point of what he believes is right for the Empire, and he's kind of acting obviously as this puppet from the Emperor. He kind of gathers all of these officers together and basically says everybody in this room is now a part of this plan that he doesn't go further into, but that if any further details of this plan leave this room, the Emperor will be dealing with this personally. So big scary. They are on this planet called Gorman that specializes in like these fabrics woven by these spiders that they kind of mention. Mainly the reason that they're there is to mine a mineral called calcite that is imitated throughout the galaxy, but they need the pure stuff. For what purposes? We don't know yet, but obviously this might be leading towards the construction of the Death Star later on. And he entrusts this sort of mission to Daedra, as this mining would result in the planet pretty much collapsing, as it will, leave the structural integrity of the planet's core compromised, and the planet would essentially be destroyed. So she's entrusted with convincing the people of the planet to evacuate and leave as they mine this mineral basically to the planet's destruction. She is not on board with it, obviously, and she talks with one of her other officers as to why she doesn't want to do that. The officer basically tells her that this is a gift that she has been given, and if Krennic has already given it to you, you cannot go back from it. You take this as a gift and you win, and you just do it. So she's just going to deal with it. We don't go much further into that storyline, as we then see her return home to Cyril, who was basically a police officer in season 1. He's now a bureaucrat in season 2, as we see in his first scene in episode 2. They return home. There's kind of like this exchange of a plan that they could not cancel on anymore. But Daedra insists that they go with this plan as they start prepping, and obviously it's looking like some sort of dinner party. But for who? We then see that it is for Cyril's mother, Edie, played absolutely wonderfully by Katherine Hunter, who is just such a legendary actress. I know her more from Poor Things, and she just has this soothing and just like raspy voice that fits perfectly with her character. She's so silly, and she plays this kind of overbearing mother of Cyril to perfection. And you can obviously see that Cyril is very uncomfortable with her presence there, but Daedra makes it a priority to lay down the law on Edie, basically saying that I will ensure that he will visit you twice a month and call you, but that all depends on the level of anxiety that you provide the two of us, which is crazy. And she just hits her with one of those like, I'm not done yet, as Edie tries to interrupt her, and it's so fun. I want more of this little rom-com drama that we have between Cyril and Daedra. This is where that arc kind of ends for us. It's actually a kind of nice break from, all the bureaucracy and the action and the torment that we see from the other kind of arcs. So it was a nice little departure, a nice little break from all of that. So props to that story arc. The next one we get is a lot more bureaucratic, and I think was one of the bigger reasons that turned off a lot more Star Wars fans from this project, as it is very bureaucratic and just a lot of, little red strings on a map going from there. It's not like it's all of this action that's happening kind of behind the scenes as these big wigs are all talking. I'm obviously talking about
Mon Mothma.
who in this instance is preparing for her daughter's wedding that was arranged at the end of season 1 to a Mr. Skulden, who is another kind of big wig, big money floating around, and that could help her funnel money and clean out money to the rebellion. But he doesn't know why, that's what it's for. That's made it very clear. She just tells Skulden that she just needs to funnel this money for her own purposes, and he's like, done, but I want your daughter to marry my son. And that's where we're at now with this storyline. We also see her with her friend Tay, who is another big wig, big money, but they are obviously a lot closer, even to the point that, to where Perrin, Mon Mothma's husband, is getting a little bit jealous and kind of accusing her of adultery almost, and thinking that like she's cheating on him with Tay, as they're kind of seen together all the time. Tay's out there just getting drunk every single night and being asked to leave, but he just keeps coming back because he's worried about his investment and where this money for this foundation is going to. We start to see him get a little bit worried and even threaten to go to Skulden to dig a little bit deeper into where all this money is going. But at a certain point in episode 2, he already knows that this money is being funneled out to the rebellion. It's also here that we also see Luthen Rael, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who was a very big player in season 1, as he was pretty much the leader of the rebellion at this point, like building up that rebellion and helping out Cassian in season 1, even though he pretty much almost kills Cassian in season 1, but now they're still sort of working together to continue this rebellion and to keep it afloat so they can obviously take down the Empire. And obviously he's very worried that Tay is going to go to Skulden about the reasoning for this foundation, which would obviously put the rebellion in dire jeopardy. So that is a conversation that him and Mon Mothma are having throughout these 3 episodes, but it just continues to get pulled away as she is worried about her daughter and how this wedding is kind of affecting her in a way, as we see her crying because her fiance doesn't want to hold her hand. Obviously, these two do not want anything to do with each other, but it's rich people stuff. Like, they're gonna have to get married. And it even leads to a point where Mon Mothma is there with her daughter right before she is about to walk down the aisle, and tells her a story about how her mother was drunk at her wedding and pretty much could not give her the conversation or even the option to say, you don't have to go through with this. We can go out there, say, have a good afternoon, but this isn't happening. And her daughter pretty much tells her, I wish you were drunk. And this obviously hits Mothma really bad, as she just continues to go through with this ceremony, which is very Japanese looking. It is so pretty. It's so organized. The outfits in just this story arc alone are fantastic. The set design is just absolutely incredible. The ceremony happens and this party is essentially going on, with all of these things kind of piling on to Mothma, with her husband accusing her of cheating on him, Tay's bullcrap, Luthen getting all up in her steez about all this stuff that's falling apart at the seams. She essentially just takes her daughter's advice to heart. And there's a speech earlier on in episode 2 that Perrin goes over that, pain is going to come to you. Anxieties are going to pile up on you from wherever. That's just how life works, but we have to just kind of sit back and enjoy the festivities when they come to us as an escape from the stresses of life. And that is exactly what Mon Mothma does as she slams back 2 shots. We see a robot DJ come in and start playing this absolute banger that just has it's kind of like a little coordinated dance with everybody as everyone screams Niamos and shoots their hands up in the air. And she's just full on party girl mode as we see the camera sweeping around her and she's waving her arms up. And she is actually the last thing we see in these 3 episodes, as it's like the music is playing and escalating. She's dancing and then it just stops, and even parts of the credits are just in complete silence. Just a crazy way to end the episode, or just to end this 3 episode arc. But that's where we see that arc stop. We transition into the last arc, which to me was kind of the least, I'd say my least favorite of the 4 story arcs that we got, because it was really a lot of just waiting for stuff to happen, especially in episode 1, where we see Bix, Brasso, and Wilmon, who were, Cassian's like kind of rebel team in the first season, stranded on this kind of wheat like farm planet, and they're kind of just sitting around waiting for this inevitable Imperial inspection to show up. They're obviously there illegally. They don't have visas. There's only one person in their party that's covering for them that has a visa, and it's a lot of back and forth with like this head farmer coming back, giving them the scoop as to where the inspection is at these points, like in certain farms across the planet, that inevitably leads to, them just continuing to ask, have we heard from Cassian? Have we heard from Cassian? No, we haven't. It's a lot of that until we get to episode 3 and the inspection finally lands on their farm, and it's this pretty big scaled battle. And before we even get into that battle, there is a little kind of sub arc within that with this Imperial officer who is basically trying to rizz up Bix, and she keeps talking about how her husband is off planet. He kind of sees through the bullcrap, and it inevitably leads to a moment in episode 3 that I didn't think we were going to get in a Star Wars anything, where he pretty much is trying to like seduce Bix. At one point tried to force himself on her, and she just inevitably beats the crap out of him. It ensues in a fight that just ends with a lot of screaming, and with Bix literally saying he tried to rape me, which I was just like, what the heck? Like, I didn't think we were going to get something like that in a Star Wars, anything. So that was very interesting. Long story short, this battle ensues. There's troopers all over the place, which I love it when we get some trooper action in literally any Star Wars. Like, I love my clones. They're so great, but troopers are where it's at. Those are my boys. And we see them kind of like in the middle ground of like, season 1, they were absolute badasses. Here, it's kind of in that middle ground where they're starting to get a little bit silly and it kind of be pushovers, but they're still hitting, they're still shooting straight, and I love it. It's here now that we kind of bleed back into Cassian's arc, because he's now on the planet and he's blowing up all of these Imperial tanks. All of these stormtroopers are getting straight up destroyed by this TIE interceptor. He essentially lands on the planet. The result of this battle, we do lose Brasso, who I kind of described it to myself as like space Jason Kelsey, who was like kind of like a, father figure to everybody in that crew. He's seen trying to get away on a speeder bike, and he gets shot by a stormtrooper off screen. We kind of see this shot of like a stormtrooper like readying up his rifle very slowly, and you assume that he lands his shot. Brasso is dead. Brix finds out Brasso is dead, and she gets a little emotional, but Cassian gets her onto the TIE fighter along with Wilmon, and they escape the planet. And that is where we are left off with this 3-episode movie. I mean, the total runtime for these episodes, when you put it together, is about 2.5 hours. I literally just finished watching it, so wanted to make sure I get on here and voice my thoughts, my opinions on it. There's obviously going to be a lot more down the line. We still have to meet up with K2SO, so I'm hoping that next Tuesday is where we get the next time jump leading into Rogue One, which obviously I'm excited for. I'm ready to see where the rest of this series takes us, and I'm excited. And just, let me know what you think. Let me know if, like, do you love this new season of Andor? What did you think of the first season? Just let me know what you think down in the comments, or just, message me your opinions. I'd love to hear them. But as always, thank you everyone for following, and just make sure that you follow the Instagram page and the YouTube channel. It's where I'm going to be voicing everything about Andor. I'm going to continue this on, and we're going to see where the season goes from here. But until next time, thank you for watching. Until the spire, my friend.